Hello, I'm Jenny Fern, and welcome to my library. Oh, we have a visitor. Oh, we have a Lewis. This is Louie. He's a little bit cuddly right now. Today I would like to talk to y'all about how I read so much this year and how I feel about it. So far I've tracked over 100 books in Goodreads, and it's been about 6 months. In previous years, I've read maybe about 50 books, 40 books. So let's talk about how this year was different. Tip number 1, I cheated. I started on December 25th because I got all reinvigorated about reading on December 25th. And I had time off, I had a few days off for the holidays or whatever. And so I just decided to start my year early. So I counted those books for 2023 instead of 2022. Tip number 2, I read a lot of audiobooks. So for the past few years, I'd been deeply entrenched in YouTube watching permaculture and permaculture-related YouTube videos. I have kind of gotten a lot of information out of that, and I don't think I need to consume so much anymore. If you hear a ringing sound, which I can't believe you wouldn't be able to, it's my cat Gordon who has a bell on him and he's scratching himself. Louis also has a bell on him, but he's very cutely on my lap. So I decided to severely cut my consumption of permaculture YouTube videos, listening to them while I'm gardening and doing the dishes, and now Louis is fighting me. So all that time where I would usually be listening to videos, I decided to listen to books instead. In the morning, for example, I have about an hour where I get ready. This means I'm feeding the cats and my dog, and I'm taking my dog out, I'm making myself breakfast, doing some makeup, that kind of stuff. I listen to an audiobook that entire time now. So I can read a book a week in just the 5 hours in the morning if I listen to the book at 2 times speed. There's also the time where I'm doing the dishes, walking the dog, doing some gardening, folding laundry, that kind of stuff, where I could easily be listening to a book. Tip number 3 has to do with reading in a variety of different ways. This means reading through audio, reading through digital copies, and reading through physical copies of books. The different manners of reading can help you break up the hobby into more distinct chunks so it doesn't feel so tedious, and it almost kind of feels like you have different hobbies going on even though you've just been reading the whole time. There is also ways of reading that are more convenient for certain situations. So if I'm waiting in line, or I'm being driven somewhere by an Uber driver, I'll read a digital copy of a book on my phone. If I'm doing something with my hands, like I'm gardening or doing the dishes, then I'll read an audiobook. And if I'm about to go to bed, or if it's the weekend and I'm having some coffee in bed, then I'll read a book, a physical book. Tip number 4 is to read a variety of types of books, like styles. So this means you could read manga, you can read graphic novels, you can read children's books, you can read young adult books, different genres of novels, novellas, nonfiction, short stories, that kind of thing. This again will break up the hobby into seeming a little bit more diverse and less tedious. So in other words, it's more exciting to read a variety of work. In addition, when you read stuff like manga or graphic novels or children's books, those are usually quite fast reads. So you can also read more books by just reading work that takes you less time to read. Tip number 5 is to take enjoyment in what you're reading. If what you're reading feels like a slog, you're not gonna want to read it. So just put it down and read something else that you're excited about. So maybe it's not the right time to read that book, so pick up a different one that you're really excited about, finish that one, and then you'll get a new urge to read more good books. You might pick it back up and you might just never read it again. An add-on to this tip would be to read multiple books at once. And this helps if you are at like kind of a point where you don't really want to continue that much with one of the books, but you want to read, you have something available to you. And then if it was a quick temporary problem that you were having with the other book, you can pick it right back up. So you can have various moods throughout the day, and you can have various books that will suit those moods while you're reading. Tip number 6 is to read very fast. And this is kind of weird and something that I only really learned this year. But I had an urge to read some of the classics that were on my shelf. They've just been looming there, and I was like, I felt this like urge inside of me. I'm like, I really want to read some of these books, like kind of that feeling that you get where you're like, I need to read before I die. Like it was that kind of crazy urge. So, sorry, there's some kids on scooters in front of my house. Clover is also disturbed by them. So one of the ways that I got through these classics, which is kind of a silly way to look at it because I enjoyed quite a lot of them, but I got the LibriVox audiobook because they are public domain classics, so they're old enough to be in the public domain. And then I listened to the book at like 2.5x or 3x if the narrator was a little bit slow. And then I would have the book in front of me and read the pages so that I could fully understand what was being said, just at a much faster pace. Tip number 7 is to have some sort of exciting outside impetus to make you want to read. And by this I mean have like somebody on YouTube who will recommend books that you will enjoy. So watching book recommendation videos or people talking about books, listening to your favorite book related podcast, something that will spark within you the curiosity for a book, get you excited about some books that you have on your shelf that you haven't touched yet. Just something that will keep you chugging along and remind you about how much you love reading. I find hearing other people talk passionately about books helps me get out of a slump if I'm having one. Just hearing that enjoyment makes me remember that I can have that too if I pick up like the right book at the right moment. So this bit of the video is going to be about how I feel about reading so many more books than I typically do in a year. It's been interesting because I've read some really great books this year, and I've also read some that I didn't really like. But the great thing about reading a lot of books is that you have more books that you've read that you think are great. I feel more empowered with reading, and I also feel like my love for books is increasing. I know that I won't always be reading this many books within a year. I know that sometimes I just don't feel capable. I don't feel in the mindset to be able to read like this. So I am happy to take advantage of it now when I do feel that way. And that is the end of the topic portion of this video. Now I'm going to end with a specific book recommendation. Similar to last video, this is a specific book recommendation as asked by ChatGPT. If you would like to make my day, please leave in the comments what you would like to hear for a book recommendation, and I hopefully will get to it. Okay, so let's pretend that somebody asked for a book to read during a picnic in a blooming flower field. So for this, let me get it. Okay. So for this, I have The Story of Ferdinand by Munro Leaf. This is just perfect for this prompt. Let's go into a summary, plot summary. The Story of Ferdinand by Munro Leaf is a children's story about a gentle bull named Ferdinand. Unlike other bulls who dream of being chosen for bullfights, Ferdinand prefers to sit quietly under a cork tree and smell the flowers. Despite his peaceful nature, Ferdinand's size and strength make others assume he's fierce. When he accidentally gets selected to participate in a bullfight in Madrid, Ferdinand chooses not to fight and is taken back home. So I actually had to go get this book out of the little free library because I donated it, and it's still in there, so I can just grab it. So I chose this because Ferdinand is definitely a character who would love to have a picnic in a field of flowers. This book is really sweet. The story is really sweet, but also the illustrations are really pretty. Like this, I just love the style. It's really pretty watercolor. So that is all I had for you today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you guys again soon.